According to the American Psychiatric Association, about 1 in 100 are sociopaths. Despite the numbers being high, very few engage in acts of extreme violence. Being a sociopath does not automatically mean that you want to kill everything in sight just for the sake of it. Most sociopaths have long-term jobs such as surgeons, businessmen, and lawyers, and are actually normal people. Sociopaths don't always have a raging voice in their head telling them to kill. Although they don't always intend to kill people, it is true that they are susceptible to murder. It's worth noting that sociopaths should never be confused with sadists. Sadists enjoy human suffering. Sociopaths are just indifferent to human suffering. The ability to commit murder comes down to social and environmental issues. Social psychology is the study of how individual or group behavior is influenced by the presence and behavior of others. When normal people hear about a tragic incident involving the murder of an individual or a group of people, we tend to experience empathy. Why sociopaths either feel nothing or gain inspiration to engage in copycat killings. This is because the part of the brain called the amygdala, which controls our emotions, does not work in sociopaths. This lack of functioning of the amygdala allows them to distance themselves emotionally from their actions, including murder. Let me put it this way. If a sociopath wanted to murder someone because they were provoked or had some reason to, they wouldn't have no problem doing so. Later that night, they would probably have forgotten all about it. Whereas most people would have that on their conscience for the rest of their life. Clinical studies have proven that people who exhibit high levels of behavioral aggression in response to provocation possess a so-called warrior gene. Scientifically known as the MAOA gene, people who possess this gene are prone to aggressive antisocial behavior. In 1994, Stephen Mobley, convicted of murder, armed robbery, aggravated assault, and possession of firearm, was sentenced to death. His trial occurred soon after the publication of a paper attributing aggression to a deficiency of MAOA. Supporting this claim were data reporting that 8 men from the same family had repeated episodes of aggressive behavior. One had been convicted at the age of 23 of the rape of his sister. Another tried to run over his boss with a car at the shelter workshop where he was employed, after having been told that his work was not up to par. A third would make his way into his sister's bedroom at night, armed with a knife, and forced her to undress. At least 2 more were known arsonists. Han Bonar, the geneticist in the Netherlands who described this unfortunate family, found evidence that the males with criminal behavior had a mutation in a gene on the X chromosome, which was later to become the famous warrior gene. The popular NBC TV series called The Blacklist explored more on the warrior gene in one of the episodes. In the episode, during a spike of apparent random violent crimes, all the listed suspects were civilians with no prior criminal records, having been manipulated by social psychologists to violently act out at their breaking point. 3 phases were necessary to activate the gene. The first step was disruption, the schedule, the routine of their daily lives. The second step was destabilization. It destabilized their sense of self-worth. The third step was to sever their primary emotional bond. When all 3 factors were met, the warrior gene would be triggered and tragedy would follow. Natalya Dolganovskaya grew up in a city in Russia called Ulyanovsk. In 2005, she took part in a local beauty pageant named after the city, which she won. After winning her beauty crown at age 18, Natalya got married to a local tycoon who was also a politician. but the marriage ended childless 6 years later. He remarried after the breakup, while Natalya had problems getting her life back on track. She continued to work in a store owned by her ex-husband after the split. She had confided in her mother and explained how she felt that some demons had clung onto her. CCTV footage captured the moment she made her way to the fruit and vegetable section. She is seen pulling a knife out of her handbag, all the while screaming, "I hate women." She approached a 36-year-old unsuspecting saleswoman from the back and stabbed her multiple times before the saleswoman could realize the predicament she was in. The victim made multiple attempts to avoid getting stabbed further, but was easily overpowered by Natalya, who was twice her size. She was pushed to the ground and repeatedly stabbed in the neck. Her colleagues quickly rushed to her rescue, but not before life-threatening injuries had been inflicted. Natalya fled the scene, but was apprehended by law enforcement shortly after and detained on suspicions of attempted murder. The incident was treated as a random and unprovoked attack. Fortunately, the 36-year-old woman did not succumb to her wounds. Natalya depicted characteristics that clinical psychologists would describe as inadequate and rageful. These are murderers with shortcomings that follow them throughout life, who also express psychotic impulses and are prone to rage. These people live with an underlying smothering rage, then kill when the rage is ignited. Same was the case with one of America's most prolific serial killers, Ted Bundy. Theodore Robert Bundy was an American serial killer who kidnapped, raped, and murdered numerous young girls during the 1970s and possibly earlier. After more than a decade of denials, he confessed to 30 homicides, committed in 7 states between 1974 and 1978. His true victim total is unknown, and could be much higher. Bundy was regarded as handsome and charismatic, traits that he exploited to win the trust of victims in society. He would typically approach his victims in public places, feigning injury or disability, or impersonating an authority figure, before knocking them unconscious and taking them to a secondary location to rape and strangle them. He decapitated at least 12 victims and kept some of the severed heads as trophies in his apartment. Experts have several theories as to what events in his life may have triggered this behavior. Psychologists point to several different reasons, among them a bad breakup with his first girlfriend, just like it was in the case of Natalya. The fact that nearly all of Bundy's victims resembled his first girlfriend Diane Edwards, white and slim, with long dark hair, has led psychologists to speculate that his killings were spurred by the ending of their relationship. He even told his longtime girlfriend Elizabeth Clover that there was a force or entity inside him that he could not control, in the same way that Natalya had told her mother that she felt a demon had clung onto her.